Hello everyone, it's your favorite shrimp. I'm back. So on this one, this is little bit of a different type of map review. Mapper is N Null, and he asked me to look at this map. I gave him some quick thoughts. Basically, my thoughts is that the map does a okay job in some parts of distinguishing um, different phrases with sort of unique things, particularly in like the verses. But in the choruses, a lot of the jump patterns just ended up being triangle jump spam with the same spacing and doesn't have any nuance or contrast. And so he asked me to give some ideas on how to resolve that. And so here we're going to go through and we're going to sort of elaborate maybe a little bit more on what I mean and give some um, nuggets for them to think about how they could change this in a better way. So the place to start is really always with the song. Listen to what the song is doing and what changes are there in the song. What elements repeat in the song. And I think even though this song is sort of D&B, wubby, whatever, right? And very repetitive, certainly. There is nuance in these synth sounds. So, for example, you do a good job with these, where you use this very specific pattern, very specific rhythm. But then we have this phrase here, and this phrase here, and you distinguish them a little bit in the jumps, but my concern is that ultimately these triangle jumps are going to all feel basically the same. Like they're all the same spacing, they're the same intensity, and yeah, you're flipping it horizontally, but that is not something that you do consistently to represent that sound every single time. So that doesn't become an element that actually represents that sound. That is just part of sort of the jump spam, if you will. So a better way is to, okay, we have this phrase here. What unique element can we use to represent that and only that? We have this one here. What unique element can we use to represent that and only that? So, for example, maybe we make this introductory, this transition phrase, maybe linear. And then we make this one sort of the jump triangle spam. Just as you have this rhythm here for this sound. And then we have another triangle jump right here into more triangle jumps. And these are all completely sort of different instrumental phrases that really should have some more nuance to them, particularly given the fact that you don't even change the rotation here. It's just all part of the same rotation. And it doesn't change until here. So it really makes these phrases really blend together really hard. And if I got rid of the NC here, that would even be even more clear, right? If you get rid of the NC, it looks like it's a part of the exact same pattern. And I actually think that it's intentionally designed to be that way. It looks like it kind of is. So be a little bit more cognizant of what you're grouping together. Because this, to me, should be maybe a much smaller spacing, right? Like very exaggeratedly smaller spacing. Oops, get that bigger. I'll fix this. And so if you make this much smaller, well then that much bigger spacing here then can stand out. Not that I would do this necessarily, because you have to also consider, okay, what is this sound being paired with elsewhere in the map? Right? So this sound here, it's kind of similar-ish to this one. It's not exactly that. It's going to happen later. Like this one to me is sounds pretty similar. But there's like a little bit of nuances here. And for like this doesn't capture that, right? It's triangle. And this one doesn't even have the rotation change or the direction, the axis change, right? The other one, you flipped it 90 degrees. This one doesn't even do that, right? And this kind of spacing increase, the player doesn't really feel this. You're going from really big spacing to ever so slightly bigger spacing. And that just doesn't really stand out at all. It's all gonna play as like one part of one big thing. If I get rid of the NC, and you'll see it, right? NCs don't have emphasis. It just looks different. It doesn't actually feel different. All right, and then here, really big star jumps, and this one's like okay, but this is like a calmer part of the. To me, this is like not enough contrast for what the song is doing. Maybe not doing a huge spaced with like this is the same spacing as you were doing before, effectively, right? And yeah, you're making a big star out of it, but it's gonna feel like the same. So I'm a big fan of incorporating some wide angles. I'm a big fan of incorporating spacing variety. Maybe instead of the sharp angle stuff, you just make it wide angles like this. This one's pretty easy. You can do this, right? You could even do it like this. And then you have a really cool direction change, and you get this building spacing with a really powerful direction change and slowdown. Okay. So we go back to this. But then here we have this triangle jump leading into more triangle jump. And yes, in this case, your direction change did happen. You did change directions here, but this is going to feel like that star pattern, right? This is a big star pattern that you just did over here, right? It's exactly the same pattern that you're then using over here, right? So we really need to have more diversity in our patterning and our movements, our spacings. And in a lot of cases, this necessitates different rhythm choices, right? I am personally a big fan of not grouping circle jumps or circle clicking into more circle clicking, right? A really easy way to incorporate or to get that contrast between these phrases is to just make the rhythms different. Like here, there's a change in that rhythm, and yeah, you change your spacing, but it ends up feeling very similar, very samey, because it's just, again, triangle jumps. And this is also triangle jumps that you did over here for a completely the same exact triangle jumps, but you did it for a completely different sound, right? This sound here with this back and forth where it's overlapped here, if you want to call it V jumps or whatever, you did that V jump here. And then over here, when that same element repeats, it's not a V jump, it's a star jump. And then over here, where the V jump actually is, this is a different sound. And this one, actually, I don't even think really fits the 1/2 or the 1/2 jump spam, because a lot of these sounds are like sort of distinct. So perhaps like something like this. Maybe you can do some like kick slider type of stuff, right? Mix up that rhythm. Probably like this. That'd be nice. And then you do it here. And then doing something different again for this one, because this one is not nearly as intense as the other ones. So you don't want the spacing so big. So we'll reduce that spacing. And this one's a very different synth. So again, spamming that triangle jump, it just doesn't really stand out very much. So maybe we do like a big wide angle linear. Could be sort of an acute angle like that. That actually play really nicely into this. I think this plays really nicely. Once again, triangle into more triangles. But they're different phrases, right? We need to separate them a bit more. This is nice. This has a lot of contrast. This is great. And sort of the issues that I've been talking about so far are just constantly repeating in these choruses. And you do so much of a better job in the verses, where each, for the most part, the verses have like a sort of unique idea for all the different sounds. And a big part of that is like the rhythm choice is different. And we don't really have that rhythm choice diversity in the choruses. Like, even though this is all triangle jumps and stuff like that, there's a lot more spacing variation within the jumps, and there's these pauses where they stack, and that really helps to make this feel very different from what you were doing in the choruses, which is necessary given the fact that it's a completely different section in the song. So I thought the choruses, or the verses, were done much, much better. Well, the build-up is quite good. And there's other things I could talk about here, but, you know, a lot of those other things are extremely minor in comparison to, like, the bigger issues that I'm talking about. Like, we have this triangle jump that leads into these triangle jumps here, and you can hear the difference in the song, right? It's completely night and day here, where it changes. But the spacing change itself is not enough to give it that night and day difference. It doesn't match what the song is doing. And ultimately, this pattern is effectively the same thing. It's just scaled down from this. So we really would want to enhance that contrast, whether that be extremely different spacing differences, or a completely different sort of movement. Maybe it's like this instead of what you had. And then we get that really, really powerful emphasis where that spacing happens. In this case, this one is fine, because these are all sort of repeated sounds that are exactly the same. So this one's okay, that you can do the triangle jump spam here, and it's okay, because it feels like it's exactly the same. It may be nice to have some sort of separation, because it does sound like they're 3 repeats instead of a continuous thing. Like, you patterned it effectively like it's like this, when to me it feels more like these, what you have comboed. And so maybe something with a bit more of a emphasis on that start of that. And so an easy way to do this would be like a very low spacing, anti-spacing on this, right? So maybe it's like this, where you have that sort of anti-spacing to the start of the new combo. And that can really give it a nice impact. You could also, of course, do direction changes, but I think it makes a lot of sense to have that direction repeat, just like continuous rotation here, so that when it stops doing it, it really stands out. Like, for example, here, it could have stood out right here, where it changes a little bit. Although I probably would have kept waiting. But notice that here, you kept that direction change going all the way till here. Or the rotation keep going. Which may be bad design in this case. I could maybe understand it. But this one's a very different synth. And this one is a very different sound entirely, right? This sound... There's like barely anything on this. And there's barely anything here, I think. It's like somewhere... like this one is pretty different compared to like this one here, where there's like this funny like synth sound, and we're not really capturing any of that nuance. A really egregious example would be here, where this drum comes in, but the drum doesn't have any significance. It doesn't stand out at all because it's mapped exactly the same as everything else, as if it wasn't even there. And it's pretty easy to just, you know, get rid of a circle that you don't need, or use some sliders, or kick sliders, or, right, whatever it takes or maybe a different pattern, right? And the easiest way to get pattern ideas is just to look at other mappers. And ideally, you have to look at mappers that don't do this, right? There are a lot of maps that you're probably familiar with where people just spam triangle jumps on any sound that justifies it. And that's not the type of map that you'll find the pattern inspiration that you really need for something like this. Somebody like Mir would be a better example. This is really nice, the way you stack it. Like, this is the kind of contrast that I'd like to see. But notice that we did it here and not over here, right? This is the same sound. So what's with the difference, right? Why is one stacked and one the same exact triangle jumps? This one over here. These are very, very different sounds, right? So we have this. And it really does feel like there's like a grouping here, and then like there's this one here. And so maybe doing something like this can really help all that. And it could be as simple as patterning too, right? Maybe like this. You don't even probably need this one. Yeah, I would do this. And it could be like this. Could stack it like this. I think that really, like, and ultimately these issues just kind of continuously appear throughout. And, like, what ends up happening is that now we have this siren in the background, this, like, tornado siren. Right? You hear it in the background of the song, but that wasn't present earlier in the song. That's a new element, but there's no difference in your mapping to signify that. And those kind of subtle details, you don't necessarily map with your rhythm choices, but you can map it in other indirect ways. A really good example of that is going to be on Close to You. I made a whole analysis video on this map. But what you'll find is that we have this first part of this chorus. And it's mapped this way, right? And then in the second half of the chorus, an added vocal harmony is in the background now, where this vocalist is just sort of screaming. And that wasn't there in the first part, right? And the way that Undead Capulet represents that is through exaggerating some of those choices that they did previously, right? A higher SV, higher spacing. The lower space stuff that was before is now really big spacing. And of course you can look at my longer analysis video for more details on that. But those are the kinds of things that that would really help make your map stand out a lot more than it currently does. But I've rambled enough. Hopefully that makes some sense for you. Obviously, I'm not going to map it for you because it's your map, right? But that's my perspective on how you can make your map better. And the easiest way to get ideas for how to change things is to look and find some inspiration from mappers that you like. And, you know, if you need some ideas, somebody like Mir would probably be a good place to start. All right, cheers.